Hey guys, welcome to our third Vineyard Worship webinar. We're going to be talking tonight about making records in the local church, and I've got a sweet, amazing panel here for you tonight, all around the globe. So pretty excited to have these guys with us. Just want to say a couple of things before I introduce them. If you're not from a Vineyard Church and you're joining us tonight, you're super welcome, especially welcome. Obviously, probably a lot of Vineyard family on here tonight. Just wanted to say we're really grateful to Casey and me, Helmner, for joining us from Vineyard Worship Nordics and the US. In the UK and Ireland, we're just really grateful for the amazing sense of family that we have in the Vineyard movement, and really stoked that you guys are giving up your evening to be with us tonight. We've also got Steve from Integrity Music, who we're now partnering with, and Sam as well. So yeah, we're going to have a chat running, guys. So I think how it works is you can just drop in comments and say hi, and we have had some advanced questions come in for this webinar, so we'll probably prioritize them, but if you do have questions that pop up, we'll do our best if we have some time to try and get through everything. So yeah, okay, so I'm just gonna pick on someone. Do you want to introduce yourself, Casey? Just tell us where you are tonight, which church you're from.
Yeah, I am in Southern California, and it's still morning, so there you go. Yeah, I am here in Southern California. I attend most weeks when I'm not somewhere else. COVID changing everything. The Fullerton Vineyard, which is in North Orange County, so that's where I'm at. Yep.
Awesome.
Was there more than that? Sorry, Jimmy.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, awesome, man.
Okay.
Steve, do you want to?
Hi all, I'm Steve. I live reassuringly close to Jimmy in Chichester. I am married to one wife and I have two children, and two of them are I think asleep. So I don't know whether that's my wife and one child or two children. So and I have been working for Integrity Music for a couple of years. I did 17 years of producing, mixing, mastering, and then I've been demoted to A&R, working for Integrity. Really lovely to be with you all.
Thanks, man. Me, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yes, I am from Sweden. Right now, I am in this small town by the ocean called Oskarshamn. I don't think it will ring any bell for you guys, but I'm a part of Stockholm Vineyard, and that's where I've lived for 7 or 8 years now. So Stockholm has been my home, and I'm actually on my way to move down south. So I'm in transition mode, but it's really good to be here.
Thanks for coming. Yeah, great to have you. Leno.
Hey guys, how you doing? Yeah, I'm Samuel Lane. I'm the worship pastor at St Albans Vineyard. I live in sunny Markyate in Hertfordshire, and it's just north of London, so we're just outside of London, really. 2 kids, 2 little ones that take up a lot of energy, and hopefully they're asleep as well. So yeah, if me and Steve have to go missing at any point, you know what we're up to. But yeah, that's us.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, giving up an evening to be with us. Yeah, so just before we dive in, I think we're going to try and, oh, sorry, I'm Jimmy. I work for Vineyard Worship UK and Ireland. And like Steve said, I live just down the road in a little village down the road from Chichester, so South Coast. And my family are out tonight, which is great. So I love them, but it's nice to have a place to myself. So yeah, we just wanted to so kind of a little roadmap for tonight. We're going to talk about what Steve called the motive, the why, the what about making a record. Then we're going to talk about the how, and then the third part will be hopefully answering some of the questions that have come in. But just before we get into that stuff, and I want to pull Casey in as well here, but just to say, for anyone out there in the Vineyard movement that's watching, listening tonight, you don't need our permission from Vineyard Worship to make a record. Okay, if you're a singer-songwriter in a church, if you're wanting to do a local Vineyard EP, you don't need any permission legally, and you don't need actually any permission from Steve and the Integrity guys. So just to clarify, if there's been any confusion around that, you guys just crack on. And actually, what we would love to do is give you our blessing. We really want to encourage and empower you guys to do that. I know some of you are already doing it, and you do send us what you're doing, which is great. And I'd just encourage you to keep looping us in, email us a link at Vineyard Worship, and we'd just love to hear what you're doing. And you know, the Vineyard movement around the world is so diverse, and that's one of the things that we love about it. And we actually want it to be, we need more diversity, guys. We need more, just a way bigger spread of what we're seeing. We love what we're seeing, but we need more. So yeah, and we want those authentic local expressions from your churches and your people. Case, did you want to just jump in at that point?
Yes. Yeah, I think just to echo again what Jimmy said, like it's not only permission given, like you're allowed to do it. We desperately need local church grassroots creativity. The strength of the Vineyard movement is songs that bubble out of in the trenches, real life ministry of people going to work and people wrestling with God on the local level, and those songs coming to life. For me, many times, in fact, a good chunk of the times, the global songs of the church and the global songs that we've been blessed to birth and to steward, they have very local stories. You know, they aren't some top-down record label creation. They're songs that come out of the guts of our local church life. The way I like to think about it is my favorite kind of food, my favorite kind of beer and wine are these sort of farm to table, locally sourced. They come from, there's a wine word or vineyard, right? The word is terroir. It's a sense of place. Our songs should have a sense of place, and those things that we wrestle with in our personal lives and on the local level really bring and give life to the rest of our movement, and then sometimes to the rest of the world. So not only do you not have permission, that's where the activity of God is. So please create, please write, and not only that, break the mold. It doesn't need to look like whatever you think Vineyard is looking for, or whatever you think the worship sound of today. Jimmy said we need more diversity. We need more diversity. We need genre diversity. We need ethnic diversity. We need multilingual diversity. All these things are what, and I think this is baked into our ethos. Like this, you know, I just think this is who we are creatively. We're a movement. The worship movement, Vineyard, was founded by a jazz musician. Okay, well, jazz is all about experimentation and breaking the form. So if that's where we start, and you know, and of course we have a creative God, and you know, we come from a God who's infinite in his creativity. So there I quoted Wimber and I quoted the Bible. So I guess that's about all I have to say about it. So yes and amen to permission. Please write and go. Yes.
Love it. We could actually, we're done. No, I'm kidding. That's great. Love it. Yeah. And just a couple of little myths that we wanted to dispel as well from the get-go before we dive in here. So just some of the things that maybe do the rounds that we just want to shoot down. So number one, production doesn't matter. You know, we don't value like the clothes that we put on our songs are important. So production does matter. We do want to do things excellently. We want to craft songs. We want to make great recordings. So hopefully you haven't heard that from this group. We love the whole journey of creativity and recording. But the second myth would be that it's not all about production. This whole Vineyard Worship thing is not all about production. Production is not king. We hold these things in tension. That's kind of a vineyard thing. And maybe just the last thing to say is, you know, particularly in these times that we're in weird times, but in terms of creativity, being a musician, and a lot of you guys would probably be maybe struggling to make a living doing this. If you're out there, particularly if you're live musicians right now, I don't think you need to spend a ton of money to make a really great, compelling record, whether it's a single, an EP, or an album. The obvious famous example would be Billie Eilish and the story of that record last year, making an incredible pop record with her brother producing in a bedroom in their house, you know, and it's kind of gone around the world. So I just think we need to just be creative, and sometimes we need to work with what's right in front of us. So I just want to talk about the motive now. So Steve, can we bring you in here? You had some great thoughts about why.
Did I?
Even, yeah. You got that to hand, but why we would even press record?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, there's a few reasons, and I'd be really interested in what the other people here would like to throw in as well. For me, the first thing is it's really good fun. It should be. It can be really good fun, and a time to sort of flex creative gifts that maybe we haven't before in community. I think another thing that is a real benefit of perhaps if you are looking at considering recording is it really helps foster original songs. And I know that's been mentioned already today. And I know that I've spoken with some of you guys before, and I really think original songwriting is important for communities. And the way that I've heard it described in terms of nutrition, if you want to be healthy, you eat at home. And I know that I think that this works as well within worship, that in terms of our diet, if you like, of worship music, if we can bring home cooking, if we can bring homemade songs into our communities, I think there's something very healthy about that. And I guess recording is a really helpful for part of that, and helping to realize the dream. I almost see it like a lot of you guys listening and watching will have melodies and lyrics in your hearts, and recording helps to make that transition from the inner world to the outer world, and part of your creative group, part of your community, your church group. So that's really helpful. I mean, it's good enough for God, wasn't it? You know, the word became flesh and moved into the neighborhood, says John. And there's something about the concept when it becomes incarnated, when it gets recorded, is out there, and that's quite exciting. I think what's brilliant about recording as well is if it's done well, it's a collaborative thing. So it's not just one person isolating away, but hopefully you can include lots of people within that, the people that play, the people that write, the poets, the theologians. You know, I think there's if done well, it could be a real community grower. What have I written down? Oh, it's great for spiritual formation recordings. Like I didn't really think I had an ego before I started recording, and then, you know, who knew? I did. I've got a real opinion about things, and And that was brilliant because it just brought me face to face with myself. And I think it's really helpful to do that. We've all got egos, and our choice is whether we bring it to Jesus or not. So a tech formation is good for spiritual formation. It's good for tech formation. It's great if you can include all your tech people. If you can include, you can kind of skill up. I think this COVID time has been a real time of skilling up, and it's going to really help the facilitation of original song. If you can start to help realize it from more than one instrument, you can share that vision with other people in your community, and then to the wider community at all as well. There are also reasons not to record. So you don't have to record. It's just something to consider. If it's distracting or if it's divisive, then leave it alone. It's only recording. It's not the Great Command or the Great Commission. But it can be really beneficial and a good community creator.
That's great, man. Thank you. Yeah, spiritual formation. So that's a great point. I think we could all relate to having those moments in the studio, listening back to something that you've just recorded, and the speakers are brutal, right? I mean, they just leave everything out there, all your blemishes, all your humanness. So yeah, that's great, Steve. Thanks, man. Sam, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about at St Albans Vineyard Church. There's been a lot of local records over the years, and I just wanted to bring you in here just to talk about developing local people a little bit, how that's worked there.
Well, yeah, I mean, carrying on from the motive question, I think, we started writing songs before we were deciding to record anything. We had an evening service called the Burn Service, and at the time we struggled to find songs that we felt like we could own, for ourselves, and so part of that was writing songs that reflected how we felt, and part of that was scouring, and that was kind of before internet as well, scouring, trying to find songs that you felt you could sing with integrity and own for yourself, And I think, and so we wrote a ton of those songs, quite early on. A lot of them ended up on the Beautiful album, things like that. And but they were written not for a recording; they were written for a service, for a church community to express ourselves, And I think that really, there's something powerful about that. I think it's tricky. It's so easy for the motive to maybe cross a line and become like, let's show everyone what we can do at our church, or let's put our church on the map, or it's so easy to feel. There's so much music out there, so many albums out there, and you feel like, well, we haven't done one yet, so we've got to get one out quick. I think you've got to work really hard to sort of protect that. The purity of motivation, being like, this is what we want to express to God. Let's try not to think about how this can go global just yet. Let's try what works for our church, and let's not worry about, that's not going to go into the CCLI, or things like that. And so I think it's really learning to express yourself and your true creativity, and bringing your team and bringing all your musicians along with you, whether it's for a recording project or whether it's just in your worship times, your worship team, trying to encourage people to bring their own creativity, their own voice, their own sounds. Very rarely will I be, like when we do a new song, for example, very rarely will I like play them the CD and go, can you nail that part that he's playing on the CD? I'll let people know the song we do, and probably send them a YouTube clip or whatever, but then I'll be like, look, that's it, and then we go and we work it out, and then it sounds like us when we play that song, and then we can own it, and people bring their own creativity. And I think that's so important. For people have got to be, well, we're made to be creative, you know, and people have got to feel like they're contributing, you know. They're not just we're not just a jukebox worship team, you know. And I think when you have that level of ownership, when you're encouraging that ownership, you unlock like the motivation to get good at your craft. Like, people want to play well, they want to write great parts, they want to just you know, because they can bring themselves for the first time, and that's a really releasing thing, you know. So yeah, I would just say that try and bring people along with you. There might be a few things you want to, like musically, if you've got a bit of a producer head on, you might have a little bit of direction, but I would say try and just release people to bring what they have and bring their own creativity to the sound. Whether that's for a recording or just your general worship times, you know. And also to say, you know, it's our own personal responsibility to get good at our instruments, to get good at our craft, you know. I think sometimes that responsibility can be put on the shoulders of a worship pastor or something, you know. And or some people like, well, yeah, they just kind of leave it up to you to do it. But I really honestly say, you know, we've got to bring, it's my responsibility to get good at my craft. And what happens is, you know, if you, as a worship pastor, if I work on my craft, everyone else sort of, they just come with you and they do it themselves, you know. They see that, oh, he's practicing, I should practice as well then, probably, you know, that kind of thing. So we've never done like we've done like the odd like vocal workshop or something like that, but we've never done like hit it hard to try and like train people musically or anything like that. But we've been blessed to always just seem to have a wealth of good musicians and stuff, you know. And I let them do what they want to do most of the time. So, so that's it, really, you know.
That's great. Steve mentioned he touched on collaboration, and me. I'd love you to just tell us a little bit about your experience of co-writing in the pop space, and how we were talking last week about how you noticed that was different in the church to the. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think it was great what Steve was saying, sort of like the inclusion and the community creator. I thought that was a really good word. So basically, all my experience from writing music has been sort of from outside church. So I've been very active songwriter and artist through Sony in UK the last couple of years. And what it meant practically was me running around in London, being lost and meeting new people every day in different studios, and new people. And then you had to create something. So you could be 2 or 3 people, you don't know each other, and then you create something, and you know what the purpose is. You know that you're gonna leave at the end of the day with a song, right? So basically what we had to do then was like the first couple of hours, you really need to, you know, get to know each other. You take a cup of coffee or a beer and you just talk about life. You talk about what's going on in our lives, get to know each other, get to know each other's hearts. And from that space of, you know, sharing personal stuff and what's happening, you get inspired and you start to throw ideas about what we want to write, and people just come with their gifts to the room and what they're good at, and then you collaborate, and then you start pitching ideas and you start, you know, have fun, play around, and then you just come, at the end of the day you leave with some type of song or demo or something that you have created. And I just think, I don't say that I feel like church should work, you know, exactly the same as the music industry or, you know, the label making of it. but I feel like it's something beautiful with people coming together in that way. And when I started to be more active within worship and also writing within the church, I just felt like it was different. People were not that used to working together. It was more of a, do it yourself mode, and it's too personal, or it's, too touchy to involve other people. And sometimes there was also, this classic thing of, you download a song from heaven. And of course, sometimes it can come from like a spiritual moment. But I just felt like I wanted to bring that in. So what we did actually now this spring, we had this songwriting project within the Nordic worship, where we just tried to team up in 2 and 3, where there was like one experienced writer in every team, and then you included, maybe there was like a writer or the prophet in the church, or someone who only had the heart for the church, basically. And we got together as a team, and then we started to share live what is happening in our church, what is going on, what is God doing, what do we feel like we want to help the congregation to sing and pray, and also for ourselves. And from that, we just used the same concept to have fun, and then out of that you started to write, and it was beautiful. It was like a beautiful collaboration, and people not used to writing worship got involved, and we just celebrated the songs that came out of that project. Maybe they will not end up at a Vineyard EP, but it got something going, and I want to see more of that in the church, that we are not afraid of sharing and including people that wouldn't see themselves as a writer. So yeah, get the people together, have fun, and just create. I love it. And also young and old, it doesn't have to be the worship leaders or the worship people or the young guys in one corner and then the older people. Get together, mix. I think it's beautiful. Yeah.
I love that. And I just jumping off what me said and what Steve said, and also what Sam said, I'll just jump off what everybody's saying here. So one of the things from that I want to just pick up on from what me just shared is, I think there's something interesting that can happen in this workspace. Well, number one, by collaboration, but number two, by letting the recording process fold into the writing process. So I think many times we have this kind of well, we're a movement out of the 70s. When it comes right down to it, we're a folk singer-songwriter base to our worship expression, kind of in the beginning. But there are many other ways to think about creativity and writing songs. Again, this is in the songwriting workshop as much as it is a production workshop. But just because we personally may not fit into that singer-songwriter, solo person with acoustic guitar or piano vocal thing, there's many other ways to dive into this whole production songwriting thing. Me's background in pop music is a great example of people with different strengths, people that are top liners who are lyric focused and melody focused, that don't necessarily have to think about the arrangement of the groove or the production of the whole thing. If we can just explode our idea a little bit about what songwriting can look like, or even expression of worship in the local church, and just using this, using production and recording as a developmental tool, but also another word you said is fun. It's fun. Just giving ourselves permission to mess around and not have an end in mind. I think of, obviously if we want to write songs for congregational worship, we want them to work, be singable, all those sorts of things. But many times we draw this box around what we're doing before we even start. So I love the exercise that they're doing in the Nordic countries, where they're just creating for no purpose, or maybe there's a bigger purpose, but you don't put the pressure on it from the beginning. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that's great. And we love what's happening in the Nordics. Me and Maria, if you're out there, and Some of your beautiful songs are leaking across the North Sea into our worship sets. We're super grateful for what you guys are doing, you know. Okay, so we're going to move into the how of you know, actually record making, and just to tee this little section off, I got some really interesting advice from a guy probably 5 or 6 years ago, who had made a ton of records and ran a label. And sorry, my email's coming in. Yeah, and he said, whenever I start a project, I think about 3 things. I think about the songs, I think about the producer who's going to produce, or that might be one person or a team, and I think about the philosophy. And that was really interesting to me. And actually, the more I've used those 3 things a lot over the years with what we do with Vineyard Worship in UK and Ireland, and the philosophy, or you could also say that the values behind what we do. Every time we do a project, there's, I guess, whether we realize it or not, there's a set of values that are that's underpinning that project, and it might not be visible, but and I wanted to open this up to all of you panelists, guys. But so just to give a couple of examples, if you were doing a local, let's say Chichester Vineyard, we were doing our own EP, and let's say that we'd pick 5 songs that came out of a local song circle. Pretty quickly we might run into the question of, do the people that wrote the songs, are they also going to record the vocals, and do they need to record, you know, I don't know, like all the guitars, or because that they have such ownership, or which there's nothing wrong with that, but the flip of that could be, actually, you know, I'm just gonna randomly pick, like, Mi has a great voice and she needs to sing Casey's song, because she's got the right vocal for Casey's song, and actually we need Steve to play keys on it. You got a great voice too, man. But so that would be like a value thing. Again, you know, if we were doing a local thing, we might say, internally, we might say, we're only going to use Chichester Vineyard musicians, because this is, surely that would be crazy to bring anyone from the outside into this little creative bubble that we have. But then another church might also say, well, there's a great drummer from London and he's not in the vineyard, and actually he doesn't even have faith, but we need him to come and play. So I'm just curious, panel, if you could just speak into the philosophy thing, the values, because I feel experience has told me to try and articulate with the team that you're making a recording with up front, like, okay, here's some non-negotiables. Like, we need some, you know, we're doing a Chichester Vineyard EP. We need some people from Chichester singing it, at least, even if we're, you know, going to change the band up. So, yeah, guys, what kind of experience have you had with, maybe good and bad, with philosophy, values of projects?
Well, I could jump in real quick. Yeah, I think this philosophical conversation is where I'll say churches, but it could be artists or labels or whatever. You know, anybody who's starting a recording project. This is where you could kind of lose the plot really quickly if you haven't really figured out the why of what you're doing. Because at some level, we all want to make when we endeavor to make a recording, we want it to be as good as possible, right? So, and that's where the philosophy comes jumping in. Like, if it's a Chichester Vineyard project, if there's no local players on the project, did that hit the mark? Did that make it better? You know, if you don't settle the underlying why of what you're doing, then maybe you make that decision. Maybe you're documenting. Maybe your goal is to document the songs as good as possible. So maybe that's a place where us as the songwriter surrender our vocals or surrender. Even we open ourselves, like collaborations come up already. We don't get, we stay a little open-minded to the production choices and those sorts of things. But again, staying back on the philosophy, you can end up spending a lot of extra money if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, and you could miss the mark. Again, if you're trying to make a local church record to document your local worship team, your local songwriters, your local voices, there may be, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So the other side of that philosophical thing is like, okay, well, we're willing to embrace some, for this not to be, you know, the be all end all from a production standpoint, because there's some balance between ultimate production quality and doing something together. So, you know, a lot of times maybe those things can work together in some contexts, but sometimes there's some give and take between figuring that stuff out. So
that's great, man. Yeah, I should just shout out to Casey as well, because 2011 I spent 6 months as his intern at the Vineyard studio in Houston, Texas. We shipped over there as a family, and I learned so much from this guy, man. I just want to thank you for everything that you've shared and poured into not just me, but like so many of us around the Vineyard world. So yeah, thanks, dude. Anyone else want to make a comment on the values thing?
Yeah, I can do that. I mean, we just had that experience. We had an EP project within our youth movement here in the Nordic, which is very small. But we actually had a small group of people, me included, who wrote the songs. We had this weekend getaway, and we wrote the songs there. But we wanted to include the youth themselves, and so we just wanted to include more people. So therefore, we asked people to join and to sing and to contribute with their gifts, both in, you know, also when it came to recording, to video and audio, kind of young people who were just starting out. And I knew that was a risk, because I don't want to put young people on the spot, and if they feel like they're uncomfortable, but we really wanted to make sure that they thought this could be fun, and we don't want them to have too much pressure. But I felt like I liked that we as writers, we sort of took a step back, and then we tried out the songs together with the youth. And then we felt like we want them to step forward in a very natural way, like together, not putting like, you know, an artist in the front and wanting to put light on one person. But I felt like it was good. It was good because the ownership became, now it was the youth EP, and they took ownership of the songs. And they also learned something from the process, both recording and also because we had good people overseeing it. But I felt like if you have people starting out, and if you have people who are curious and that just want to be involved, I think it's a good idea to take some risks in that. Maybe they aren't the professionals, but they are really talented, and to oversee that and to include and involve, I think is just a good way of doing it.
Yeah, that is great, me. Honestly, I think risk taking is huge, and trying people out. You know, we're kind of in we're in an interesting day and age where we can kind of audition people by seeing what they've done on YouTube as well. I've certainly done that with a couple of Vineyard records over the years. You know, where we were looking specifically for a bass player or a drummer and or a singer, and it is kind of a risk, you know, throwing people in. But generally, that I can honestly say that's never backfired. I think it's always been great for them, great for us, and I love that you highlighted that.
Yeah. Sorry.
So
I was just gonna jump in, and just like pastorally, I think whatever you do, whatever project you do, there's going to be people that want to be involved, and people that are going to be maybe disappointed that they're not involved. And I think especially if you're doing a local recording, yeah, you've got to be really careful about that. You know, if you got a load of session musicians to do that, you would probably end up with a load of disgruntled, discouraged musicians in your worship team, you know, and so that's not really going to help you out on a local church level, you know. And so, I mean, you'll just be aware really of people, and it's going to be difficult because, you know, you'll have more than one singer in your church, more than one drummer, you know, all those things, and it is difficult. But I think that is, you know, going back to the earlier points, it's figuring out what's your priority really is it to build up the team and to create an accurate sort of expression of what worship is like at your church, that kind of thing. Because I think there's massive value in that. And I think recording is such a learning experience, you know, like some of our egos. I remember early on recording was really brutal because it was kind of Pro Tools days, and so where you know, now you can edit stuff and tidy up a load of stuff with a few clicks of a button, you know, but it used to be you'd have to actually play it well, you know. But to do that, you know, it would be like, oh, I've got to do, I'm on take 36 and I still haven't done it, you know, kind of thing. And so, but that's an amazing, it's still hard even now with Pro Tools, you know, and it's a learning experience. And when the red button is pressed, you know, you suddenly cramp up and you start sweating and you can't play guitar at all, and you know, all that sort of stuff happens. And so it's really good just to get experience doing that, because I think the half of the battle is just being able to relax in a studio setting with people, like listening to what you're playing in detail, you know, that kind of thing. So taking a team that hasn't done that before, it's not easy to do that, you know, and it can take you a long time to bring just one song together sometimes, you know, but there's massive value in doing that and going through that hard work, trying to do that, you know. So, but that's, you know, that's definitely, if your priority is this is a local recording, that's, you know, we want to build the team up, you know, and come out with a few songs that our church can sing and own, you know. So
yeah, no, it's great. I think could we just talk a little bit, kind of connected to the philosophy thing, the values thing. Another thing that we found helpful over the years is trying to define the who, you know, of the how. So like, who's responsible for production, let's say. Steve, you've been quiet for a little while. Why don't you, when you're looking for a producer, why don't you explain the role, how you see the producers function in the recording?
Cool. Okay, so the producer for me is the sort of the it's the overall role. It's the sort of in terms of musicality, in terms of if in kind of a lot of recordings, it's who brings the players in, who chooses the player. It's the person that maybe helps the songs sit together if there's more than one song. There is the producer often will set the vibe and have a bit of a vision for the song. So yeah, in terms of how this works, that would be some of the roles I would say that the traditional producer would have. So like the old school producer would be a separate person, probably in a hot tub on a phone somewhere, you know, back in the 70s or something like that. And it's gradually evolved. So there's also the engineer, so the person who is doing the physical engineering, whether that is desks and microphones or whether it's computers and Pro Tools, and that's just a recording software, Pro Tools, if people say that, or Logic, they're recording programs, and producer has now very often morphed into engineer, producer, DJ, beat maker. These are all terms that can be applied to the producer, but it's someone who has an overview of the project is probably the simplest way of saying that. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, that's great. So I just wanted to ask you, because you mentioned with the Nordic Youth EP that tell us about more like the creative producer oversight role as opposed to technical,
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's just like Steve is saying. I think it's more of an overviewing role, because myself is not. I can do some home recordings, and I can make sure to make a quick, vocal editing mix, but I'm not the tech person. So I feel like also these days, the producers that I've been working with is, a lot of people is just someone with their computer at home learning how to make sounds and mixing and doing everything. Usually now you're multitasking and you have multiple roles. But what I liked is that we had a great teamwork between someone. I was more overviewing the creative parts and the sounds, and if it made the songs justice, or if it felt like this is what the song should symbolize, or the feelings we should get out of it, or more taking that responsibility of, and also make sure that everyone in the process was feeling good and safe. So I was also multitasking, but I definitely felt like the planning and also the overviewing of the finished product, and also the arrangement bits I was overviewing as more of a creative producer. So I think that you can do it in different ways. You can be multiple producers if you work together in a good team. I just think it's good if you are on the same track, and if you are, if you're one producer or if you're a team, it's good if you're not, pulling each other apart, but actually contributing to each other's gifts and helping each other out. So I felt like we had a good team. Johannes doing more of the classic producing, mixing, arranging role, and me more overviewing and steering the whole thing in the direction. Does that make sense?
That's great. I think it's just it's really interesting to know how it can also work. You don't have to be plugging mics in and editing waveforms to be the producer. So just lastly, I wanted to ask maybe Casey, can you talk to us about, because I'm sure you've done some records where you've just produced the vocals only, right?
Right.
Just talk to us about vocal production, just a little bit.
Whew. Well, I think like every piece of a recording project, there's, like when you think about production, you're thinking about there's some intentionality that's going into like why do we repeat that chorus twice, or those, you're getting to the weeds of the way the song's built, and vocal production is no different. So, the vocal, the lead vocal on any song in our world certainly is the focal point of what we do. So there's, just like with the rest of the song, there's push and pull with dynamics. There's performance dynamics between, and even if you're doing a studio recording, there's the experience of the vocalist. If the vocalist has never been in the studio before, it's like this dance between technician, creative director, and psychologist, especially when it relates to vocal production. So that's not to throw, I'm a vocalist myself, so it's not to throw vocalists under the bus, but it's just vocals, it goes without saying that vocals come out of our very being, right? So, if we play the wrong note, it's one thing. If we sing a sour note, it the heart at kind of a deeper level, right? So for people to feel safe and free and to express themselves emotionally, vocally in an artificial environment like the studio, it takes some some sensitivity, and it takes some patience, and it takes, I generally try to keep things general. I don't play a lot of mind games. There's lots of producers that, you know, you hear stories about producers that play. I don't really know any that really do that sort of thing to try to trick people into some sort of performance they're looking for. I'd like to keep vocal sessions very free and fun and open to trying new things. A vocal producer's also listening to, as a vocalist warms up, they'll, first of all, their performance will tend to relax. Second of all, they'll come in, their vocal, just like any muscle, their voice will start to get into kind of a sweet spot. So it's a dance between getting what you need out of a vocal take, knowing where the vocalist is at, how it's coming across in the emotions. It does bleed into things like mic technique, and or obviously the types of mics you're using, the types of outboard gear you're using. Mic technique getting into things like a really close present vocal, or a vocal that's further off the mic, and you're getting more. I'm getting into the weeds a little bit. All that to say, there's a lot of creative and technical things. If you're very, like anything, if you're familiar with the tools, and then also very familiar with the song, and becoming very familiar with the vocalist's experience level, skill level, and then maybe try to push them into new areas perhaps. And then at the end of the day, we want a vocal that you can feel. That's the thing that I'm always looking for, from every piece of what we're doing, creatively speaking. I want to hear the vocal and believe what that person's saying. So that's a little bit of an X factor that's kind of hard to put in a bottle and sell. But yeah, it's sort of the centerpiece of what we do, vocal production. Is that hitting the mark, Jimmy?
No, that's awesome. Yeah. And Sam, I wanted to ask you, because I've had so talk to us about I want to know, okay, so I've been around for a few moments when you've been cutting vocals with a producer called Bob Hartree.
Mm-hmm.
He's a Vineyard guy, and we love Bob. He's had a huge impact on our recordings, but he the first time he put up a mic with you singing down it felt kind of like something magical happened. I almost felt like I heard something new coming from your voice that I hadn't really heard before. He just has a knack of getting something from you that no one else seems to be able to do. Like, just talk to us about that dynamic a little bit, because that just seemed pretty special.
I don't know what Bobby does, but he's got the knack, his magic hands, and tons of vintage gear, which I think helps as well, But yeah, I mean, it is, he's really good at putting you at ease, which helps, because I think as a vocalist going in to record something, there's a few things I will do, like maybe routines that I will do just to try and help myself feel at home and feel comfortable. I take shoes off, and it's almost trying to, and I'll pray, and I'll just try and ignore what else is going on around me, and we often would dim the lights and just try and get into a prayerful place where I'm singing the song and connecting with the lyrics. What am I actually singing? I don't know what Bobby does, but the good thing about Bobby, he's not looking for a perfect take. He's not interrupting the take loads and being like, right, go back. Can you do that one word again? All right, okay, we've done that one word. Now try the next sentence. I'll do a few, like almost like a take of the whole thing, and usually around 5 or 6 takes will probably do it. And it's with Casey, as Casey said, it's like you're trying to find the sweet spot, and it's different with different songs. Like some songs that are maybe a bit more demanding from a vocal point of view, you might hit that sweet spot a bit earlier, or or you might go over the cliff. So your voice isn't quite bringing, you're losing strength and stuff like that a bit earlier. So it's about, getting comfortable, but also pacing yourself as well. Like, I think maybe the most we did was 4 songs in one day, but sometimes it was just 2 songs in a day, and which, we just take it easy, and then I like to do a lot of experimentation with Bobby. So we did a lot of like ad libs and kind of like falsetto stuff. He brought out a bullet microphone, which I would just sing like really high pitched stuff and like build on harmonies and stuff. And that kind of stuff is all, it takes time to do that. And almost got to create time so that the process never feels rushed, I think if you're rushed, which you might be at the very end of your, like, when your studio time's running out, something like that. But if you can get into a place where you're not rushed and there's a bit of space for you to be creative and try something different and make mistakes. And, I always said to Jimmy, Jimmy asked me once, like, how I developed my voice and stuff like that. And I've never had any lessons, but I've always made loads of stupid noises in my car while I'm driving and like explored the boundaries of my voice, whether it's low or high, trying to sing along to Michael Jackson or whatever, just mucking around. But it really helps you kind of open up different tones, and so that happens if I tighten up that bit of the vocal cord or whatever, it's kind of just mucking around with it. But I think experimentation is just is key, really. And I think you're just trying to find the gold, and unlock it, and
that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. I was asking,
Hey, can I jump off that real quick?
Yeah.
I think that, first of all, that's a really great real world vocal production example. I think the other thing that's really, really great about Sam in this context is Sam knows what he needs to do, so he knows kind of like the general headspace he needs to be in, even if it's it sounds very rock and roll to dim the lights and put a candle on, or all those sorts of things. But those things kind of help you settle in and help you express what you're doing. So that's, and even the noises in the car, like he was describing, that's a vocalist who has done the work to know what he needs to do to, especially vocals in general, but worship vocals are just like it's like somebody's peeking into your private time or something, it's just, it's kind of like that way with every vocal, but at the same time, worship is to really, and that's what I really appreciate, just to fanboy on Sam for a minute. Even studio vocals, which are challenging to get so emotive. I think a lot of times live worship vocals many times will come across more directly tied to what we experience when we worship the Lord, and those studio vocals feel a little removed from that emotion. Sam's done the work to be able to express it. It's that lightning in a bottle moment where those vocals that are captured on this is Bobby, but it's also Sam. It's also a vocalist who knows what he needs to do to really emote and pour his heart out on those recordings. So good job, Sam.
Thanks. Yeah. Just on that, like there's been a couple times when there's been vocal takes where I've really sensed the presence of God, and it's like, the third take, God came in. God came into the studio on that one, and it might not be technically the best take, but there are been a couple of times where I tell Bobby, mate, that that's God came. I really felt those words, that kind of thing. So I don't know whether I leave the editing up to the producer, and so I don't know whether any of that was kept, but
yeah, that's good. Yeah. And just
well, you can always do the Kevin Proch thing and just start crying. So that
yeah,
don't sing the next line.
Yeah.
And I had a cautionary tale on vocal production. So I started doing some vocal production because a friend of mine who's a producer and engineer, and his wife is a vocalist, and he said to me, please, can you do some vocal production, because I don't think our relationship would stand vocal production between us two. So but just behind this door, actually, this lady was doing, good friend of mine, doing a vocal session, and at 6:05 we were just hitting the last chorus, a real high chorus, and I said, can you please do that one more time? And she said, no, because my waters have just broken. And she almost gave birth to her third child just behind that door there in what was a vocal booth. And she sent me a photo 2.25 hours later of the baby in her arms. So cautionary tale, watch out for those high choruses, watch out for babies, dangerous, hazardous business.
It's great, Steve. Yeah. All right. So if this next little bit will be more nerdy. So we'll get a little bit practical. And actually, just on the back end, something I remember when you were talking about Hartree, Sam, was a couple of little practical things I remember learning from him was that when he was recording vocals, everything was treated like a master take. So even for guide vocals, where you're laying down a scratch vocal with an acoustic guitar before anything else has happened, he would record it like a master vocal and keep everything. And actually, I remember that there were a few moments where those guide vocals, because of the emotional component, became the keepers, the ones that we couldn't part with, and also, just on a really super nerdy, for all the nerds out there like me, when he was firing click down your headphones, he would use a bass drum sample, which just seems really obvious, but I'd never thought of doing that, because there's always a problem with, if you're singing and you've got click in your ears and just the bleed down the mic, and then that horrible moment when you've got an amazing vocal covered in click. So yeah, get a Hartree bass drum sample and send that to your singer. So I just want to look at a couple of practicals, right? So we've talked a little bit about, on the social media that went out, about making records with maybe no budget or hardly any gear. And I know that for a lot of you guys out there, this COVID season, I know, just anecdotally, a lot of you guys have retooled. You've bought gear that you never knew what it was: interfaces, cables, USB mics, cameras, and you started figuring out how to record. And you have gear and you have stuff in your hands and a skill set that you didn't actually know that you could ever develop. So it's quite exciting for a lot of you guys. And I just wanted to think about, back to the, okay, well, maybe we have a church building, we can't meet, but we have a space. And maybe we have some basic gear that we use for live worship on a Sunday. So my guess is most churches would have some kind of laptop or iMac or something for lyric projection. So you're going to need a computer, but maybe you actually have a computer. A lot of you are going to have microphones to sing down. And I brought some props, right? So this little guy is I think maybe the best-selling microphone in the world, and they're like £80 or something. And this is the sister, the cousin. This is the SM57, SM58. Most of you will probably have them in a cupboard in your churches somewhere. I've literally seen people mic up bass drums with this. In fact, we worked with a guy once who said, Jimmy, because I was like, interesting, putting a 58 in the bass drum. And he said to me, there are no rules. If it sounds good coming out of the speakers, you just need to try loads of different mics on loads of different instruments. So this is classically known for vocals, but actually you could put it on a guitar amp or a snare drum or a tom, so, and the same with these, they're great on guitar amps. You probably have one in your church. They're great on snare drum and toms. they're fine for vocals. And actually, Casey, we use these as crowd mics on your record. I seem to remember they went with a couple of other things. So it might just be that you guys have what you kind of think are maybe cheap microphones that you could never use to record, but actually they're fine. And people cut real keeper vocals on records that you probably would have heard on the radio with stuff like this. So as long as it sounded good coming out the speakers, you know, don't be blinded by like a price tag necessarily. Of course, good Class A gear is important, but you can get a long way with some real basics. Just wanted to talk about recording acoustic guitars a little bit. Case, have you got a setup there you could just show? Because I just no.
I forgot about it. I can set it up.
No, cool. I think it would be just helpful if we could quickly rattle through. We've talked about vocals, but I know a lot of people struggle with acoustic guitars, just how to mic them up.
Yeah. Well, to your point earlier, like, you know, recording is something that a lot of people put their hand to, but in the last 3 months, almost everyone has, I'm assuming at this point, and even things like Zoom recordings and Zoom church services and Zoom meetings, figuring out original sound and all those kinds of things to try to get whatever we're doing across the internet. So, I mean, some of the basic stuff you can very quickly Google things like acoustic guitar mic placement, and there's tons of stuff on YouTube sort of thing as well. A general go-to for a single mic, you can do it with a 58 or a 57 or a vocal mic. Acoustic guitar is a tricky deal. If I was working in the local church context, I'm assuming you would have something in the neighborhood of SM81 or even AKG 414, something that you're using maybe for drum overheads. Those either large condenser or small condenser mics. Those are vocabulary words. If you don't know what they mean, you can look them up later. But those would also, particularly that something like the 414s might make a great substitute vocal mic for something offline. Or if you're using a USB mic like a Blue Yeti or Snowball or something along those lines. A general, real easy mic technique is hitting about the 12th fret, aimed at the sound hole, maybe about 6 inches away from the fretboard, just sort of literally just kind of even with the 12th fret, aimed slightly at the sound hole. That's a great kind of basic acoustic guitar miking technique. Again, let your ear be the guide. Try if you're doing church and you have amplified sound, which you probably do. You probably have any number of mics that you can give a shot. You know, heck, try to mic your acoustic guitar with a kick drum mic just to see what it does. Just to see what it does. This is has been a good time to experiment with those sorts of things. But a vocal mic could do it. Certainly a small condenser like an SM81, AKG4, or fill in the blank. AKG C1000. I'm not sure what you guys would be having kind of across the pantheon of who's watching this, but and then you can get you can have fun with all kinds of different patterns. That's a real simple way to do it. But again, Googling those mic technique, acoustic guitar miking technique, one mic. You could even search by mic model if you want. There's lots of stuff out there with diagrams, and there's lots of YouTube videos out there with what they would call shootouts, mic shootouts and mic techniquing shootouts, just to kind of let you explore the various options. So there's a deep rabbit hole to go down if you like.
Great. And just to close this out, you mentioned USB mics, the Snowball.
Yes.
I remember. I think Ryan Delmore made a record with a Snowball. Is that right? Just with one mic recording.
Right.
I remember we listened to it together once, maybe in Texas, and I remember thinking, man, like he's a great player and he's a great singer.
Right.
It was just in the right spot and it sounded really good. And for those of you that are like, I can't afford an interface, a good USB mic, I don't know how much those are, like $150, is a great way to start straight into the computer and away you go.
Yeah, and in a pinch, you could kind of do that literally with every instrument. Yeah, you could make it a challenge,
right? Just
to record a whole song or a whole record with just one USB mic.
Yeah, I think it's easy for us to despise the small things sometimes, and I'm a sucker for plugins and gear and drums and bespoke this and boutique that, and actually sometimes you can get the really raw, gritty, emotional stuff happens in kind of demo form sometimes, So anyway, I think there are loads of other things that we could talk about, like recording drums and mixing and mastering, but there's no way we can fit it in. So I want to hit some of the questions that have come in. Okay, so I'm just going to throw these out and panel just jump in. We've got about 20 minutes left. Okay, so first question, guy called Matt. How do we get the best out of our musicians? Moreover, bonus credit for using that word. Moreover, do you get in players who aren't part of the church? Considering most people playing at church are not pros, how do you prepare them to record? Great question. Who wants that one? Go, Steve.
I'll give us a start for 10. So the best way we can be kind to people and give people the best possible chance is to properly rehearse, have demos out, just trying to make music is about just getting in the right space, I think, so just making people feel comfortable, like they know what they're doing. I think just referencing before, what do you want to do with recording is probably the most important question. So whether you bring in someone or not we've kind of talked about that a little bit already. So if the point of a recording is an internal thing, then don't get anyone in. But if you're, say, missing a drummer, or you feel like, man, we'd really be piling the pressure on our 14-year-old drummer who can't play the click, we'll get a drummer in for that kind of thing. Then that's probably a good conversation to be had. Yeah, that's a starter. Anything else?
Yeah, I can jump in as well. I just feel like also how you make people comfortable is just also to keep them within their comfort zone, that they don't have to stretch too far to actually, and I think you do that by looking around who are in your congregation, what are their gifts, and sort of, I don't know, speak into that and let them develop from there. Don't raise the bar too high, and to see people's potential. But I think just make sure that you don't make the arrangements too difficult, that you don't aim too high, but maybe just, okay, in rehearsal, I think you can also play around a bit and see how can we, develop the arrangement a bit more, and how can people reach their full potential, so to speak. But I just think that just keep it simple and look around first before you feel like you need to have someone outside or a pro, because you can be surprised what people can do. Yeah,
that's great. Thanks, guys. Okay, so this is a question from Lydia. How can we plan to facilitate a wider variety of voices in the movement? It's a great question. Anyone want to take that one?
I can jump into that. I mean, like we said at the very beginning of this, if people can feel released, which is one of our goals through efforts like this, is we have wider voices when wider voices are creating and sharing things. So that's thing number one. Just be free to create and do things. So, and again, like we said a little bit earlier, don't guess or target what you're doing towards something you think somebody wants to. I would say that just doubling down on finding what makes your voice unique and finding what makes your group of musicians unique, that sort of thing. What does this local expression or this gathering of musicians actually sound like? You know, that just kind of pushing into that. So I think beyond that, we are endeavoring as a movement. Now, granted, I'm speaking from the American seat. We work in concert with the UK and Brazil and Nordic, but we do kind of run on our own tracks. So there's no overarching vineyard board telling all the various countries what to do. So so for instance, in the US, one of the things that we're leaning into heavily is bilingual, not only translated songs, that's obviously an important thing, songs from Spanish into English and English into Spanish and the like, but songs that are actually written from the writing itself in both languages. We did a song, we released a single back in February called God of Rest, Dios del Descanso, which is the first verse is in Spanish. It's not a translated Spanish verse. I'm overstating it, but it's in Spanish. There's no English version of it. It's in Spanish. And one of my favorite things about the way that song in particular was written is the chorus is, we'll call it Spanglish. It jumps back and forth between Spanish and English. For the English speakers, it's accessible and on a Sunday morning, easy to dive into. But the English and the Spanish actually rhyme in the chorus, which I'm like, extra points for that one, you know. So we're doing a few more. Then we have a single coming in the fall called Familia, written by Tina Cologne Williams and a couple integrity writers. That is very similar in structure. It's a totally different song, obviously, but it's an important song for right now because I think given especially in the U.S. in particular, but given the climate that we're all living in, we need to be reminded that we're the family of God and that our brother and sister are not our enemies. So that's just one example. We're, I hope 10 years from now we have a growing breadth of expression of all shapes and sizes, old to young, multi-ethnic, multi-genre. Let's again, we're founded by a jazz musician, so let's breathe life into our creativity.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks, man. Amen to that. Okay, so a guy called Prit has asked some songwriting questions. We can't hit all of them, but this might be a fun one. Okay, so songwriting is hard, and I find that I'm more easily discouraged than encouraged. It would be quite freeing to hear some of your songwriting fails and also how they shaped you and helped you grow in your writing. So that could be a fun one. Who wants to take that? Sam,
this is your territory, mate.
I don't know. Well, songwriting fails. The thing is, I have songwriting fails all the time. I just don't let anyone hear them. But yeah, I think you gotta, I think when you write a song, it's a very personal thing, and you gotta be, when you release something, not everyone's going to like it. And I think you just got to understand that that's the truth of it. Not everyone's going to like what you've written. You might love what you've done and release it, and then see some comments on social media or whatever, and it could just break you. It could totally break you, but I think it is a real personal thing, but I think you have to learn to kind of hold your songs lightly, when you're writing. So be open to, and do this before you record them. Be open to people you trust and what they say about the songs, their opinions. Ask them, is this working? What isn't working about this? the producer will also have an opinion, and there might be things that they feel like they want to change. And really, and also, you know, there's been a few times where Vineyard Worship, when I've sent something to Jimmy, and he's been like, he's given some feedback, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I didn't really think about that, you know. Yeah, the song would be stronger if I just worked on that a bit more, you know. And I think really there isn't any, I don't think you can do a songwriting fail. You just might not have finished the song yet, you know. That's the thing. You just got to keep writing. Just keep working on it, you know, rewrite, and yeah, just be open to the feedback, and the more you do that, the better you'll get. And I think, you know, yeah, I think I do think you get to a point where you learn what you like, you know, and I think it's good to learn what you like. And then you can kind of take someone's feedback with, pinch of salt isn't quite right, but you can kind of understand, oh, whether their feedback is something technical about the song. Oh yeah, it's actually technically needs to be tweaked, or whether the feedback is just like a stylistic preference or something like that. You know, if they were to write it, they would do this. And then you can kind of bring, you're just a bit more educated as to whether to hold on to your original idea, or whether to take that advice, you know. So, but I would say, you know, hold it loosely. Worship songs change, you know, especially if you're writing them for other people to sing, you know. It's not all about just you singing it. So, yeah, I don't know whether that helps. But.
Oh, that's great, man. Yeah. See, I knew you had something up your sleeve.
No, I just, and I also want to say that I totally agree. What is a songwriting fail? That's really hard. And I think we also need to be careful with, I think, as I said, invite people in the process, invite your friends and people you're comfortable, sort of make it a teamwork effort. But also be reminded of that some people will throw out things dependent on taste and personal taste, and sometimes who will decide what is right and wrong about that, you know. And so it helps if you go back to the why do I write this song, or what is the heart behind this song, what do I actually want to express, because then someone can say, yeah, that is not suitable, or I don't get that, but maybe that is just fine. So I think it's important on how we value the feedback, and what is the feedback, and what are they actually commenting on. But you're gonna make mistakes, and I know that my first worship songs, I wrote a song that I sang in front of the church, or I wanted the congregation to be a part of, and then the theologians came to me afterwards and had like major issues with it. And that was not my intention. My heart was right, and I wanted to express something. But sometimes we just make mistakes and we express it in the wrong way, and it's not a big deal. I think the main message of the song came through, and it was we worshipped it and we prayed it together, and that was great. So just keep that in mind.
That's cool. I can see Barnett is with us on the chat, and he like that, me. So it's not Barnett, someone else. Okay, another Barnett. Anyway, someone like that comment about the theologians came to me. I can just see these messages popping up. That's great. Can I answer a nerdy one here about? We've got sample rate one or mixing drums one. Steve, sample rate one. I'm going to actually throw this to you. Okay.
Come on then. For
recording music to a high quality within a home setup, what would you recommend as the minimum? 44.1 or 96?
44 is fine. 48's also fine, unless you're doing orchestral stuff. Higher than that is not so crucial. I think it's really important to get the order right. So the sound at source, so whether it's a drum kit or whether it's a voice, is the most important thing. The second thing is the room, the environment that you're in. The third thing is the mics and the mic placement. The fourth thing is the rest of the gear. A good preamp really helps. And so I think in terms of sample rate and bit rate, 24-bit 44.1 is still pretty good for just about everything that we're doing, unless you're in a super cool or either orchestral, or you're in a really high quality studio that can make use of the extra information you're getting. Otherwise you're just taking up extra hard drive space. Is that right?
That is great. Yeah, so when you're recording at 96, it's double the storage. And I had a question the other day from a friend who was, we were talking about external hard drives, so this is my last little prop. When you're recording to your laptops, this might seem really obvious. I'm sorry if this is 101, but it's really good to record to an external hard drive, so that your computer isn't just getting filled up, because audio files are big and it can just make your laptop bleed pretty quick. So just start your session on your hard drive, keep everything on there, keep backups, and your computer will be a good friend. Okay, one more here on mixing drums. So I might have a crack at this. So Andrew Beauchamp, I don't know if I've said your name right, sorry. What tips do you have for mixing drums to get a beefy sound but not merging into other sounds? So really quickly, I would say one of the main issues for kind of thin and weak drum sounds is phase. I've had a ton of, I've learnt the hard way with phase. So you're recording a drum kit, you've got multiple sources of sound, sometimes coming out the top and the bottom, like a snare that you're miking both, or a kick drum. You've got one inside, one outside. You've got, overheads maybe, and then close mic toms and stuff. It's pretty easy for maybe the overheads to be recorded out of phase with the kick and snare. And as soon as something on the drum kit is out of phase, it will generally cancel out all the low end. You'll end up with kind of thin, weedy drums, which is not really a thing. So it's really easy to fix, which is the great thing about phase after the recording. So most stock plugins in Logic and Pro Tools would have a stock EQ or something with a phase flip, and you just, if you can monitor in mono and go through the drum kit and flip the phase, and normally there's one culprit, like the overheads are out of phase with everything else. You flip the phase and everything's kind of sounds beefy and fat. So that'd be one thing. There's a lot you can do with stock EQ and compression in Pro Tools or Logic. There's a ton of YouTube stuff out there, but you can be pretty extreme with EQ on drums. And actually, I think you need to be to get them sounding exciting and fat. And also, just lastly, parallel compression, also known as New York style compression. Set up an aux channel, put a compressor on it with a really extreme setting, and send all of your close mic drums, kick and snare, toms through to that. I wouldn't send your hi-hat and your cymbals, and smash them through the compressor pretty hard, and then mix that back in with the rest of the real drums, and boom, beefy drums. Okay, maybe we've got one more, and then I think it's 8:30, and the good people watching this might be flagging. So let's see. Okay, let's do a songwriting one. So this is again from Prit. So I love the phrase Adam Russell was used on the Ferment podcast to describe songs that say what he didn't realize he needed to say, quote unquote. What is your experience of this as both a writer and a listener, and what practical or otherwise habits have you developed to help you find the language and inspiration for these? Good question. Who wants that one?
I mean, I think I think it's important not to. It's a really hard one, isn't it? Like, if you go out there trying to say something different or trying to sound different, I think you can overcook it and just end up being a bit weird, you know. I think, I think the best lyrics are ones that, you know, I will just keep playing around with lyrics until the words hit me emotionally. You know, if I am feeling the presence of God in the song, if it's making me tear up, then I know I've hit something good. You know, if a song is just if it's not doing anything for me, if the lyrics are uninspiring, then I will just keep working at it and keep trying to find something, keep trying to find a lyric that moves me, you know, that inspires emotion and says something that I want to say to God. And you know, this, if a song, you know, if someone thinks a song says something in a new way, it's saying it in a new way for that writer as well, you know. So, but they just get to that point where oh, that lyric is it, you know. And I'll often you just got to grind the lyrics down. And for me, I think a song, somewhere in the lyric writing process, there'll be a lyric or a couple of lines that do that. They kind of, it's like they unlock the song in a way, you know. You're like, that's it. That's what this song is about. And when you found that key, you can kind of like, okay, I've got to protect that key. I've got to protect that emotion, that sentiment, you know, that thing that I want to say to God. And then you almost then have to rebuild the rest of the song to make sense around that, or build into it, or support it, or say it some more, you know, that kind of thing. But I don't ever try and be original, because if you try and be original, you're not being original. You're just being different. But you know, you're losing yourself. So
your album, The Difference, was really good, by the way, Sam.
Thanks. Yeah. That's why I call it The Difference, because I wanted to be different.
Right.
I would also like to add, like, it's good to try to just keep your natural language. I think when we write songs, sometimes we get into this whole other way of using words, and of course it's beautiful if it's a poetic language. I don't mind that, but sometimes it could be too theatrical, or that it's not natural coming from you. So I actually think these days, and me coming more from a pop and also being with the youth movement a lot, try to just, okay, let's try to find how we actually speak to God, or my natural voice, and play around with that, because it's more unusual than we think. It's easy to come into those, you know, habits of using the same words as everyone else, or the holy words. I don't know how to describe it, but it's just nice to be able to express something very simple from your heart, and to capture the voice of who is going to sing this, who are going to sing this. Is it the local church, or the youth, or is it only you personally? Then the lyrics will sort of change, I think.
That's great. Thanks, Me. Hey, I think we're probably out of time, guys. But I just want to thank our amazing panel. Thank you so much, guys, for giving up your evening to just share your hearts, your experience with us.
Thank you.
I'm really touched by how pastoral a lot of you approach production, and I think that's super inspiring, super cool. And you know, I think some of the stuff that you guys shared about just keeping people safe, encouraging, you know, creating good environments where you can get gold from people was really, really special tonight. Thank you so much, guys. I'm sorry that we didn't get through so many questions, and maybe we'll try and follow up, divide up as a panel, and try and hit you back with some emails. And thanks also to fake John Barnett on the chat tonight. And yeah, this is going to be up, I mean, on YouTube. The recording will be out as well. So thank you so much, guys. It's been really good fun. We'll see you soon. Peace.